What's up guys, and welcome to another episode of Strongshot Archery Reviews. It's time for another arrow review, this time with two moderately priced brand name arrows. I went to my local big box store and grabbed the Carbon Express Piledriver DS and the Gold Tip Velocity Valkyrie, which both are retailing at $65 for a half dozen, which is about $11 a piece. Before we get into the results, I want to first explain my process and give you guys context to my reviewing methods. Here are my steps. First, we're going to review the specs and features of each arrow, then we'll test them for spine, straightness, and consistency. That will give us a total of 72 measurements for each box. I'll convert those measurements into simple star ratings, which will illustrate how each arrow performed in those three categories. I'll also use the measurements to generate a Strongshot quality score, and we'll use this quality score as a standard single value so we can compare these arrows to arrows that we've tested in the past. Alright, let's start off with some disclosures and a brief introduction into what I'm trying to accomplish with these videos. If you've been into archery for a while, you know that the marketing in the archery industry is quite intense. Most of a professional archer's income is generated from their ability to promote products, not from their competition winnings. So there are people that make a ton of money from convincing other archers to buy new products. So you really have to watch out for conflicts of interest. A lot of the time, they are really well hidden. I'm trying to do this differently. My intention is to make these reviews as objective as possible so you can make the best purchasing decisions. So with all of that being said, I'm not sponsored by any company, which allows me to shoot whatever I want. That's why I shoot Carbon Express, Easton, and Victory in my different setups. As you can see, I don't care about the brand. I just shoot what works for me, and if I find something that works better, I'll switch. My only obligation is to myself, so my goal is to help all of you achieve the same. Find the products that will perform best for you and fit your budget. So let's get started. First, the Carbon Express Piledriver DS with a 350 spine. This arrow has an all-carbon construction with a diameter of 0.308 inches and 11.4 grains per inch. It's advertised to have a plus or minus 1 grain weight tolerance, as well as a straightness tolerance of plus or minus 3.5 thousandths of an inch. Let's talk marketing and features. If you take a look at this box of arrows in comparison to the Gold Tips, you could tell the Carbon Express box has a lot of marketing. They put a lot of emphasis on their dual spine wait for technology, which they say produces 2 times the accuracy and penetration. This is not the time to put this to the test. I'm not here to validate the marketing. Our goal here is to measure and determine the actual quality of the arrows. This arrow is all carbon just like the Piledriver, but it's a 300 spine. It comes in a diameter of 0.299 inches and slightly lighter at 8.8 grains per inch. It has an advertised weight tolerance of plus or minus 2 grains, as well as a straightness tolerance of plus or minus 6 thousandths of an inch. So just by looking at the manufacturer's information, the specs of the Carbon Express Piledriver are a lot tighter than the Gold Tip. Let's move back to the Carbon Express Piledrivers and take a look at the results from my testing. Starting with spine, the Piledriver receives 4 stars. For straightness, it gets another 4 stars. And finally, for consistency, it gets 3.25 stars. Let's go a little bit deeper into what these scores really mean. As you can tell, consistency seems to be the weak link in the Piledrivers. When I'm talking about consistency, what I mean is the variance between every arrow in the box. Arrows earn high consistency scores when all the arrows in the box are extremely similar. The spine rating comes from several different measurements of spine, and one of those measurements is the 360-degree variance in spine. Every arrow is going to have a stiff and weak side. The bigger the variance between these sides, the harder it is to match a set of arrows. My methods favor arrows that have less of a variance from side to side, because they'll be easier to match, especially when you're buying pre-fletched arrows and you might be stuck with shooting them the way they come. So for this portion of the spine score, you need an arrow whose stiff and weak spine are relatively close together. So let's take a look at how this might play out. Here is a 300 spine arrow shaft with a stiff side of 298 and a weak side of 304. This is a moderate variance in spine. The orientation of these points affect the flight of the arrow and how the arrow exits the bow. So let's say you have a spine variance of 10, which is fairly large. So your vane's positioning strongly affects the arrow's flight. And if all your arrows are in a different orientation, that's when you get variances that have nothing to do with your form or execution. It's the arrows. Of course, you can reflex these arrows, but I'm judging these arrows as they come. How good of a starting point are they? Let's move on to the Gold Tip Velocity Valkyrie. For spine, it receives 4.5 stars. For straightness, it gets 3.75 stars. And for consistency, it gets 4 stars. Let's get deeper into these ratings as well. The Valkyrie did well in the spine variability test and outperformed the Piledriver in consistency as well. Straightness was where the Valkyries really struggled, but when I dug into the data, it wasn't because of the entire set of arrows. There was just one arrow that was just not as good as the rest. On a side note, a goal that I have for these videos is to teach my viewers how they can improve their own setups. And even though I think any archer who is really serious about their performance would benefit from one of these spine and straightness testers, that's just not realistic. They're very expensive. But I can give you a cheap alternative. This is a $25 arrow spinner where you can test your arrow straightness. Let's put it to the test. Here's an example of one of the better arrows in the pack of Gold Tips. As you can tell, there is very little movement. But if we take a look at the bad arrow that we talked about before, you can clearly tell that something's up. So if you'd like to get one of these and test your own arrows, I'll throw a link in the description. It's not going to give you any data, but it will help you identify potential issues before you start shooting and hopefully save you some time. But back to the gold tips. The issue in the straightness category was because of that one arrow that brought down the entire group. But remember, the gold tip straightness tolerance is advertised at plus or minus 6 thousandths. So the total movement we might expect to see top to bottom is 12 thousandths. This arrow was measured at 13, or 6.5 thousandths of run out. I completely understand that bad arrows happen, and I would consider removing this from the test because I don't believe it represents the entire group, but this is extremely close to what the actual manufacturer specs promised. So the official score will remain the same, but I'll still share the theoretical scores if you bought a box that didn't contain an outlier like this. First, with spine, the results stay at 4.5 stars. For straightness, it received 4.5 stars, which is far better than the prior 3.75 stars. Finally, consistency gets bumped up a half a point to 4.25 stars. Let's put the official numbers on the board and see how these $65 arrows compare to other arrows that we've reviewed. With the 42 measurements weighed and compiled, the Carbon Express Piledriver DS receives a strong shot quality score of 72. That currently puts it in 8th place on the board. The gold tip Velocity Valkyrie took a little bit of a hit because of that one arrow, but to be fair, it was pretty much in line with the advertised specs. It winds up with a strong shot quality score of 76, just above the Piledriver DS. The variability in that one arrow costed about 6 points, which would have put it above the Scheels Vendetta Pros on our board. Overall, not only are they placed fairly low, but the prices are higher than the majority of the arrows above it. Of course, this is just because the prior arrow review was the first one which covered budget arrows. We'll be covering more comparably priced arrows in the future, so this board will fill out. I hope that you find this kind of objective testing helpful. This is only the beginning. What I'd like to do is compare every name brand and arrow that I can get my hands on. Easton, Gold Tip, Carbon Express, Black Eagle, Victory, Beeman, you name it. As you guys have probably realized, keep these ratings purely objective. I'm actually buying these arrows retail, just like you would. These reviews really don't generate much money, so if you appreciate and want more of these objective reviews, I'd really appreciate if you consider contributing $1 or $2 and help me get these reviews out faster. This will add up so I can do all of the reviews that you guys are asking for. The Easton FMJ injections, the Hex, all the Carbon Express, Gold Tip, Black Eagle, all of these arrows that I can't afford right now, this will add up and allow me to get these reviews out there for you guys. To wrap things up, these arrows performed a little under where I expected. They did perform fairly close to their advertised specs, but as we already saw, there are higher quality arrows that are more affordable. I think this goes to show that we all need to start focusing on buying quality, not marketing. And as we all know, that's extremely hard to do. So with these reviews, I'm going to make it simple. Review every arrow I can and give you the information that you need to make the best purchasing decision for you. Hey guys, before we wrap this up, I just wanted to quickly address a couple questions that I received in the first arrow review video. By the time I saw these, I was already halfway done with this video, but I wanted to make sure that I addressed them. So I'm just going to add it here. A lot of the questions that several people had could be grouped into two categories. Number one was about their own arrow choices and how they perform, and number two was about people wanting to see more into my methodology and data. Let's start with number one and talk about what these results really mean. My goal here is to provide objective comparisons of quality, but that only means something in the context of what your needs are. Some people watching this video want to be able to consistently hit a target the size of an apple at 55 yards. Others want to hit a target the size of a watermelon at 35. These are completely different things. All of the arrows that I've tested so far will perform well in many hunting situations. But the common assumption is that higher cost means higher quality. And more importantly, higher quality should mean that you have more confidence in your equipment. I'm just trying to help you make sure that you're getting what you paid for. So if your current arrows are working for you, that's great, keep shooting them. But if there are cheaper arrows on the board that are better quality, then you might want to switch and save you some money. On the other hand, if you see your arrows on the board and the quality comes in lower than you expected, maybe it's time to try something that has a higher quality score. But only if you're not satisfied with their current performance. It really depends on your situation. Okay, so the second question is really about data and my methods of calculating these scores. This is something I'm definitely going to be working on in future videos, and I understand why it's so important to people, but I'm still working on the best way to put it in the videos so I'm not making anybody fall asleep. I have some ideas for how to do this in the next video, so we'll see how people like it. Regarding methods, really all I'm doing is measuring everything I can in every way I can as consistently as I can. Spine, straightness, weight, dimensions, all of that. And not all things matter the same, so the measures are weighted so that the minor things don't overpower the things that really matter. Again, I'll try to get more into this later, and thanks again for all your guys' comments. I really do appreciate them. All right, back to the other Sam. Make sure you guys subscribe for more videos just like this one. There are plenty of these reviews on the way. The best way to support the channel is by sharing the video. If you have any archery buddies that are looking into getting some new arrows, or you think this channel could help them out, make sure to share the video. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to check out the channel. There's going to be plenty of these arrow reviews, plus there's plenty of other videos as well, so make sure to check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.